The council chamber fell silent as Emperor Vacther of the Krell Dominion rose from his seat. His scaled body towered over the other delegates, each movement deliberate and threatening. The holographic displays around the circular room dimmed, focusing all attention on the Krell leader. "Members of the Galactic Council," Vacther began, his voice like grinding stones. "I come before you not to ask permission, but to inform you of what will happen. The humans have expanded too far, too fast. They occupy systems that rightfully belong to the Krell Dominion." Ambassador Sarah Chun sat quietly in the human delegation's pod, her hands folded on the table before her. She was a small woman compared to most species in the council, with gray hair pulled back in a simple style. Her face showed no emotion as the Krell Emperor spoke. "3 human colony worlds lie within territory we claimed 200 cycles ago," Vacther continued. "New Vancouver, Armstrong Station, and Terra Verde. These worlds will be surrendered to Krell control within 10 cycles. If humanity refuses, we will take them by force." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. The Krell Dominion had conquered 17 species over the past 3 centuries. Their military might was legendary. No one had successfully resisted them in living memory. Ambassador Chun raised her hand, requesting permission to speak. The council speaker, an elderly Kithari named Span, nodded toward her. "The Krell Dominion has made its position clear," Chun said, her voice calm and measured. "Humanity accepts these terms." The murmuring stopped. Complete silence filled the chamber. Emperor Vacther's eyes widened slightly. "You accept?" "Yes," Chun replied. "We will evacuate the 3 colonies within the time frame you specified. However, I request one consideration. 10 cycles is barely enough time to relocate 3 million citizens. May we have confirmation that you will allow civilian transports to depart safely?" Vacther laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "Of course. The Krell have no interest in slaughtering fleeing civilians. We want the worlds, not meaningless bloodshed. Take your people and go." Several council members exchanged glances. The Centauri ambassador, whose species had been conquered by the Krell a century ago, looked at Chun with something like pity. The Volaxian representative, tentacles curling with barely concealed satisfaction, seemed pleased that the upstart humans were being put in their place. Chun stood and gave a slight bow. "Then we have an agreement. The human colonies will be evacuated within 10 cycles. We ask only that the council acknowledge this as a peaceful transition, not an act of war." "The council recognizes this as a territorial transfer," Ashpan said formally. "Let the record show that humanity has chosen the path of wisdom over the path of destruction." As the session moved to other matters, Chun gathered her materials and prepared to leave. The Krell delegation was already celebrating, their harsh laughter carrying across the chamber. Several other ambassadors approached her with words of sympathy or thinly veiled contempt. "A wise choice, Ambassador Chun," the Volaxian said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Better to lose 3 worlds than to face extinction." Chun smiled politely. "Indeed, humanity has learned much from observing galactic history. We prefer to avoid unnecessary conflict." As she walked toward the exit, Ambassador Tyreshak of the Irinian Confederation fell into step beside her. The Irinians were one of the few species that maintained friendly relations with humanity. "Sarah," he said quietly, his feathered crest drooping with concern, "are your people truly going to just give up those colonies? 3 million citizens displaced without a fight?" Chun paused at the doorway and looked back at the council chamber. Emperor Vacther stood surrounded by his officers, already discussing which Krell noble families would claim estates on the conquered worlds. "Tell me, Tyreshak," Chun said softly, "how does the Krell military power their warships?" The Irinian ambassador blinked in confusion. "Quantum fusion cores, like most species. Why?" And who manufactures the quantum regulators that keep those cores stable? Tyshak's crest lifted slightly. Human corporations control 70% of the galactic market for quantum regulators. But surely you wouldn't— We humans have a saying, Chun interrupted gently. The pen is mightier than the sword. In our case, perhaps the contract is mightier than the cannon. She began walking again, leaving Tyshak standing in the doorway with a puzzled expression. Ambassador Chun, he called after her. What are you planning? Chun didn't turn around. Planning? We're simply evacuating our colonies as agreed. What happens after that depends entirely on the Krell's ability to maintain their new territories. Her voice carried a hint of something that might have been amusement. You see, Tyshak, humanity learned something important during our development. We learned it from our own history, written in blood across centuries of war. The greatest empires weren't always built by the strongest warriors. They were built by the most indispensable merchants, the most innovative engineers, the most connected traders. We looked at the galaxy and asked ourselves a question. Why conquer when you can become irreplaceable? Tyshak's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. Chun smiled and continued down the corridor. I suggest you watch what happens over the next 10 cycles with great interest, my friend. The galaxy is about to learn something new about humanity. We don't need to fire a single shot to win a war. We just need to stop holding everything together. She disappeared around the corner, leaving the Irinian ambassador staring after her. In the council chamber behind them, Emperor Vakthur was already declaring victory to anyone who would listen. Completely unaware that his empire had approximately 10 cycles left before everything he had built began to crumble. The war had already begun. The Krell just didn't know it yet. The first cycle after the council meeting passed without incident. Human transport ships began arriving at the 3 colonies, and citizens started the orderly process of packing their lives into cargo containers. The Krell fleet assembled at the border of human space. 10,000 warships arranged in perfect formation like a swarm of metal locusts waiting to descend. Admiral Keshva of the Krell Third Fleet watched the human evacuations. To his tactical display with satisfaction. They scatter like prey animals, he said to his second-in-command. No defensive positions. No weapon emplacements. Not even basic orbital mines. It's pathetic, his officer agreed. The humans build all this technology, and they have no spine to defend it. What the Krell didn't notice were the small changes beginning to ripple through their empire. On the 4th cycle, a power distribution station on the Krell homeworld experienced a minor fluctuation. The technicians on duty checked the quantum regulators controlling the energy flow and found nothing obviously wrong. They filed a maintenance report and continued with their duties. By the 6th cycle, 3 more power stations had reported similar problems. Food replicators in the military district of the capital began producing meals that tasted slightly off. The Krell military's central computer system started requiring manual reboots every few hours. Banking transactions that normally processed instantly now took several minutes. Pre-war jitters, Emperor Vakthur declared when his advisors brought these issues to his attention. Our systems are simply adjusting to the increased military activity. These small problems will resolve themselves once we claim the human worlds. Meanwhile, human merchant vessels continued their regular routes throughout the galaxy. They delivered goods, maintained equipment, and provided technical support exactly as they had done for decades. No human showed any sign of hostility. Trade continued as normal. On the 8th cycle, Ambassador Chun sent a data package to every member of the Galactic Council. The message was simple. For your consideration, a brief history of economic interdependence and its role in maintaining galactic stability. Most council members deleted it without reading. The Volaxians assumed it was human propaganda trying to gain sympathy. The Zentari thought it was a pathetic attempt to justify their cowardice. Only a handful of ambassadors opened the files. Ambassador Tireshak of the Iranian Confederation was one of them. He spent 3 hours reviewing the material, his feathered crest rising higher and higher as he read. The documents detailed 50 years of human trade integration. Charts showed how human technology had become woven into nearly every aspect of galactic commerce. Maps illustrated supply chains that all passed through human-controlled checkpoints. One particular graph caught his attention. It showed the percentage of critical infrastructure components manufactured by human corporations. Power regulation systems, 72%. Food replicator templates, 68%. Faster-than-light communication relays, 81%. Banking software, 93%. Tireshak immediately tried to contact Ambassador Chun, but she was unavailable. Her office sent a polite message saying she was busy with evacuation coordination and would return his call when possible. On the Krell homeworld, the problems were getting worse. The director of infrastructure stood before Emperor Vakthar with a datapad full of concerning reports. Your Excellency, we're experiencing system failures across multiple sectors. Power grids, communications, food production, transportation networks, all showing degradation. What is causing this? Vakthar demanded. We don't know. Our technicians can't find any specific faults. It's as if the systems are simply aging rapidly. Components that should last for decades are failing after cycles. Then replace them. The director hesitated. That's the problem, Excellency. Most of our replacement parts come from human manufacturers. The orders we placed 3 cycles ago haven't been delivered. When we contacted the companies, they said there were supply chain issues. Vakthar waved his hand dismissively. Once we control the human colonies, we'll have access to their manufacturing facilities. This is a temporary inconvenience. What the Emperor didn't know was that the human manufacturing facilities on those 3 colonies were exactly that, just facilities. The actual production depended on molecular templates, software licenses, and technical specifications, all controlled by corporations headquartered on Earth and other human core worlds. The factories were useless without those digital keys. On the 9th cycle, a human freighter captain named Marcus Torres was making his regular run along the Krell border. His ship, the Steady Prophet, carried medical supplies and spare parts for mining colonies. As he approached the customs checkpoint, he found himself surrounded by 3 Krell warships. The lead warship's captain appeared on Torres's communication screen. Human vessel, you are entering restricted military space. State your business. Torres took a sip of coffee and pulled up his manifest. Just making my regular delivery to the Krevax mining station. Same route I've been flying for 8 years. Nothing's changed on my end. Everything has changed, the Krell captain snarled. Your people are surrendering 3 colonies. You should be fleeing in fear. Why would I flee? Torres asked, genuinely confused. I'm a cargo hauler, not a soldier. The mining station needs their parts whether there's a war or not. Besides, there isn't a war, is there? The council recognized this as a peaceful transfer. The Krell captain stared at him, clearly expecting fear or anger. Torres just looked mildly annoyed at the delay. You may proceed, the captain finally said. But know that soon, all human vessels will require Krell authorization to travel through this region. Sure thing, Torres said. Just make sure someone tells the folks at the mining station. They get real cranky when their shipments are late. He continued on his route, completely unbothered. Behind him, the Krell captain reported the encounter to his superiors with a sense of unease he couldn't quite explain. On the 10th cycle, the evacuation was complete. The last human transport lifted off from Terra Verde, carrying the final group of colonists. The 3 worlds stood empty, their cities intact but abandoned. Climate control systems hummed. Lights still functioned. Everything was left in perfect working order. Emperor Vacthor stood on the bridge of his flagship as the Krell fleet crossed into human space. Not a single weapon fired at them. Not a single human ship moved to intercept. The colony worlds transmitted their surrender codes exactly as promised. Pathetic, Vacthor said. They gave up everything without even trying to fight. Admiral Keshva nodded, but something nagged at him. He'd been a warrior for 60 years, and he had learned to trust his instincts. This felt wrong. An enemy that surrendered so easily was either terrified or supremely confident. The humans didn't look terrified. As the first Krell troops landed on New Vancouver, the Admiral pulled up the reports from the past 10 cycles. The technical failures. The supply chain delays. The banking glitches. Individually, each problem was minor. Together, they formed a pattern. He opened a communication channel to Krell Central Command. This is Admiral Keshva. I'm recommending we delay occupation until we conduct a full systems analysis of our infrastructure. The response came back quickly. Negative, Admiral. The Emperor wants immediate occupation. Any delays will be seen as weakness. Keshva closed his eyes. He had a terrible feeling that the war hadn't ended with the human surrender. It had just begun. Emperor Vacthor's victory announcement was broadcast across the galaxy. He stood in the central plaza of New Vancouver, Krell banners hanging from every building, and declared the 3 human colonies now belonged to the Dominion. The Galactic Council received the transmission with mixed reactions. Some species felt relief that the conflict had ended without bloodshed. Others felt contempt for humanity's weakness. The celebration lasted exactly 4 hours. The first major failure happened in the Krell capital city. Every power station in the metropolitan area shut down simultaneously. Billions of citizens were plunged into darkness. Emergency backup systems activated, but they could only provide 30% of normal capacity. Get those stations back online immediately. Vacthor commanded from his temporary headquarters on New Vancouver. The response from the homeworld was frantic. We're trying, Excellency. The quantum regulators have all entered a failure state. We need replacements, then use our stockpiles. We have. They're not working either. It's as if they've been remotely deactivated. Vacthor felt the first cold touch of fear. That's impossible. Quantum regulators are hardware. They can't be shut down remotely. That's what we thought too, Excellency. Within the next hour, the failures cascaded. Food replicators across the Krell Dominion stopped producing meals. The molecular templates that told the machines how to arrange atoms into food were stored on servers owned by human corporations. Those servers had just revoked all Krell access licenses. The Krell military's advanced targeting systems went dark. The software that calculated firing solutions and identified targets had been developed by a human defense contractor called Prometheus Systems. Buried deep in millions of lines of code was a kill switch. It had just been activated. Banking systems crashed as Terran financial networks called in outstanding debts. The Krell economy ran on credit, and humanity held 60% of that credit. Suddenly, every transaction required immediate payment. The Krell banking system tried to process trillions of transactions simultaneously and collapsed under the load. Admiral Keshva watched his tactical display die. His warship's main computer system ran on operating system license from Earth. Without valid licenses, the system locked itself into a safe mode that disabled all but basic life support and maneuvering thrusters. Sir, we're getting reports from across the fleet, his communications officer said. Every ship is experiencing the same problem. We're dead in space. The Admiral looked out at the fleet surrounding the 3 captured colonies. 10,000 warships, the pride of the Krell military, now floating helplessly. They could maintain orbit, they could keep the crew alive, but they couldn't fight. They couldn't even go home without the navigation systems that depended on human software. On the Krell homeworld, Director of Infrastructure, Kravex, was receiving reports from every sector. Food supplies will last 72 hours. After that, we'll need to ration. Power is at 30% capacity and dropping. Communications are unstable. Transportation networks are operating manually. We've lost access to the galactic banking system entirely. But the worst news came from the Military Intelligence Division. Excellency, we're receiving reports of uprisings on the conquered worlds. Vacther pulled up the tactical map. 17 species, conquered and controlled by Krell military might over 3 centuries. Every single one of them was in revolt. How were they coordinating? The answer came from an intercepted communication. Human technical advisors, who had been quietly working on the conquered worlds for years, had been helping local resistance movements prepare for this exact moment. They had provided secure communication systems, helped cache supplies, and trained insurgent leaders. When the Krell infrastructure failed, they had activated their plans. The Zentari, conquered a century ago, struck first. They seized the Krell garrison on their homeworld, while the soldiers stumbled around in the dark. The Voxian rebellion followed hours later. Then the Markesh, the Thrin, and the Kelix. Like dominoes falling, the Krell Empire began to tear itself apart. Ambassador Chung requested an emergency session of the Galactic Council. She stood before the assembled delegates, her expression calm and professional. Members of the Council, I'm here to explain what has happened. For the past 50 years, humanity has pursued a strategy of economic integration. We didn't do this with conquest in mind. We did it because we believed that interconnected economies create peace through mutual dependence. She activated a holographic display showing the intricate web of trade relationships, technology licenses, and financial ties connecting human corporations to every species in the galaxy. However, we also learned from history that peace through strength alone is temporary. True stability comes from making war economically impossible. So we made ourselves indispensable, not through force, but through excellence. We provided better technology, better services, better products. Species chose to work with us because we offered value. The Volaxian ambassador stood, his tentacles writhing with anger. You sabotaged the Krell. This is an act of war. We revoked licenses and called in legitimate debts. Chan replied calmly. Every action we've taken is legal under galactic commercial law. The Krell economy failed because it was built on a foundation they didn't control and didn't understand. That's not sabotage. That's simply the consequence of their own choices. Ambassador Eshpan of the Cathari studied the human with ancient eyes. You planned this. All of it. We prepared for it, Chun corrected. There's a difference. We hoped it would never be necessary. We genuinely wanted peaceful cooperation. But when the Krell demanded our colonies, we had to make a choice. Fight a war that would cost millions of lives, or use the tools we had already built to make that war impossible. On the holographic display, the Krell Dominion's collapse continued in real time. Cities going dark. Supply chains breaking down. The conquered species rising up. The mighty Krell fleet stranded and helpless above 3 empty colony worlds. You're witnessing the power of interdependence, Chun continued. The Krell built an empire through military might. But they forgot that in a modern, connected galaxy, the real power belongs to whoever provides the infrastructure that everyone depends on. They forgot that you can't conquer the galaxy if your warships don't work. Your people are hungry, and your economy has collapsed. Emperor Vacther's face appeared on a communication screen, transmitted from New Vancouver. He looked like he had aged a decade in a single day. Ambassador Chun, what are your terms? unconditional withdrawal from all 3 colonies, reparations for the evacuation costs, release of all conquered species to full independence, and acceptance of a new treaty that will bind the entire galaxy together in an economic framework that makes future wars catastrophically expensive for everyone involved. And if I refuse? Chun's expression didn't change. Then the Krell Dominion will cease to exist within a month. Your people are starving. Your infrastructure is failing. Your conquered worlds are in open rebellion. Every cycle you delay, the situation gets worse. We're not threatening you, Emperor. We're simply explaining reality. Vakther closed his eyes. He had conquered 17 species through military superiority. He had built an empire that had lasted 3 centuries. And humanity had destroyed it in 10 cycles without firing a single shot. I accept your terms, he said quietly. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. The restoration began immediately. Human technical teams arrived on the Krell homeworld within hours of Emperor Vakther's surrender. They brought new quantum regulators, restored software licenses, and helped reactivate the banking systems. Food replicators came back online. Power returned to the cities. The Krell people, who had spent 3 terrifying days in darkness and hunger, watched in stunned silence as the humans fixed everything they had broken. Why are you helping us? Director Shravex asked as he watched human engineers work on the central power station. We threatened you. We took your colonies. We would have destroyed you if we could. The lead engineer, a woman named Dr. Patricia Kim, looked up from her diagnostic tablet. Because we're not interested in revenge. We're interested in stability. A collapsed Krell Dominion would destabilize this entire region of the galaxy. That's bad for everyone, including us. But you could have destroyed us completely. Why show mercy? This isn't mercy, Dr. Kim said. It's pragmatism. A humiliated enemy becomes a future threat. A reformed partner becomes an asset. We learned that lesson the hard way in our own history. The 3 human colonies were returned exactly as they had been left. The Krell occupation forces withdrew peacefully, and human colonists began moving back to their homes. The entire episode had lasted less than 2 weeks. Yet it had fundamentally changed the balance of galactic power. The Galactic Council convened for what would be the most important session in its 1,000-year history. Ambassador Chun presented the Galactic Fair Trade and Mutual Defense Accord, a document that had been prepared by human diplomats and economists over the past decade. This accord establishes 3 core principles, Chun explained. First, aggressive territorial expansion is economically prohibited. Any species that invades another will face immediate economic sanctions by all signatories. Second, critical infrastructure must be transparent and mutually accessible. No single species can control more than 40% of any essential technology or service. Third, economic disputes will be resolved through arbitration, not force. The Volaxian ambassador was still furious. This is human imperialism wearing the mask of cooperation. You're trying to control the entire galaxy. If we wanted to control the galaxy, we would have kept the Krell collapsed and moved in to fill the power vacuum, Chun replied. Instead, we're restoring their infrastructure and proposing a system where no single species has the power to dominate others. That includes humanity. Ambassador Eshpan of the Kadari leaned forward. The human proposal includes mandatory technology sharing. You would give up your advantages? We would share them, Chun corrected. There's a difference. Under this accord, human corporations would license our technology at fair rates to all species, with guaranteed access that can't be revoked without council arbitration. But other species would do the same. The goal is to create such deep interdependence that war becomes impossible because it would destroy everyone involved. Mutually assured economic destruction, Ashpan said softly. Clever. The debate lasted for 3 days. Some species saw the wisdom in the proposal. Others resented human influence. But ultimately, they all recognized reality. Humanity had demonstrated something terrifying and profound. They had the power to cripple any species in the galaxy without military action. The only question was whether that power would be used unilaterally or within a framework of mutual cooperation. The vote came down to a simple choice. Sign the accord and gain guaranteed access to human technology and markets, or refuse and risk economic isolation. Every species signed. Even the Krell. Emperor Vakthor arrived at the signing ceremony looking diminished. His empire had fractured. 14 of the 17 conquered species had claimed full independence. The remaining 3 had negotiated for autonomy within a reformed Krell Confederation. His military, once the terror of the galaxy, was now dependent on human contractors to maintain their weapon systems. You've destroyed everything I built, he said to Ambassador Chun as they stood together before the signing. We stopped you from taking what didn't belong to you, Chun replied. What happens next is up to you. The accord includes economic development assistance for any species that agrees to the terms. Humanity will help rebuild your economy, diversify your industries, and integrate you into the galactic trade network. But as an equal partner, not as a conqueror. And if I refuse, then the Krell Dominion will slowly fade into irrelevance while the rest of the galaxy moves forward without you. Your choice, Emperor. Vakthor signed the accord. 3 months later, Ambassador Tyrshak of the Iranian Confederation met with Ambassador Chun at an informal gathering. The Galactic Council had just approved the creation of the new Economic Security Commission, which would oversee implementation of the accord. I have to ask, Tyrshak said, was this always your plan? Did humanity deliberately make itself indispensable so you could control the galaxy? Chun sipped her tea and considered the question. We made ourselves indispensable because that's how you survive in a galaxy full of species bigger, stronger, and more aggressive than you. Humans aren't the strongest warriors. We're not the most technologically advanced. We're not the oldest or the wisest. But we're very good at one thing. We learn from our mistakes. Which mistakes? All of them. We studied every empire that rose and fell on Earth. We learned that military conquest creates resentment and rebellion. We learned that economic exploitation breeds revolution. We learned that true power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the ability to create value that others need. We didn't come to the galaxy planning to dominate it. We came planning to make ourselves so useful that no one could afford to attack us. And now you've turned that defensive strategy into a galactic governance system. No, Chun said firmly. We've turned it into a framework where conflict is economically impossible for everyone, including us. The accord limits human power just as much as it limits Krell power or Vorlaxian power. If we abuse our position, we face the same sanctions as anyone else. Tyrshak's crest rose with amusement. You weaponize peace itself. I'm not sure if that's brilliant or terrifying. It's both, Chun admitted. But consider the alternative. The Krell would have continued conquering until someone stopped them militarily. That would have meant a massive war, millions of deaths, and a galaxy divided between victors and vanquished. Instead, we have a system where war is simply too expensive for anyone to afford. Is that really so terrible? The Iranian considered this. What happens when some species finds a way around your economic controls? What happens when someone figures out how to fight without triggering your sanctions? Then we adapt, Chun said. That's what humans do. We're not trying to create a perfect system that lasts forever. We're trying to create a stable system that can evolve as the galaxy changes. The Accord has built-in review mechanisms, amendment procedures, and dispute resolution processes. It's designed to grow and change, and humanity will guide that growth. Humanity will participate in that growth, along with every other species. We're not looking to rule the galaxy, Tire Shack. We're looking to survive in it. If that survival means creating a system where everyone prospers through cooperation instead of conquest, then yes, we'll take credit for that. Far across the galaxy, on a human research station, Dr. Patricia Kim was briefing a team of economists and engineers about their next project. They were beginning preliminary studies on integrating 3 newly discovered species into the Galactic Trade Network. Remember, she told her team, we're not conquering these species. We're offering them something better than what they have. Better technology, better medicine, better infrastructure. We offer value first, and integration follows naturally. A junior engineer raised her hand. What if they refuse? What if they see through what we're doing? What if they see through what we're doing? Dr. Kim smiled. Then we respect their choice and move on. The strategy only works if species choose to participate willingly. Force destroys trust, and without trust, there's no stability. We're building something that has to last for centuries. That means patience, respect, and genuine mutual benefit. She pulled up a star map showing human trade routes, technology licenses, and infrastructure investments spreading across the galaxy like a vast web of light. This is the new human empire, she said. Not built on conquest or coercion, but on connection and cooperation. And the beautiful thing is, the stronger it gets, the more stable the entire galaxy becomes. Everyone wins. That's not imperialism. That's just good business. The team returned to their work, planning the next phase of humanity's quiet expansion across the stars. Above them, through the station windows, the galaxy sparkled with infinite possibility. Humanity had learned its lesson well. The pen truly was mightier than the sword, and the contract was mightier than the cannon. And they had won their war without firing a single shot.